Hi, everyone. The Partial Prophet here. Thanks for tuning in. So, I wanted to remind you that we know in part and we prophesy in part, and then when Jesus comes, we will see fully. So, today I wanted to talk about Will Hanukkah 2021 Bring the Messiah. So, so actually, tonight is Hanukkah Eve. And so this is Sunday, um, Sunday, November 28th, that I'm making this. And so tonight is Hanukkah Eve. And so that's when the Jewish people light the first light of Hanukkah. Okay, and so I'm kind of wondering if there's some prophetic pictures in the story of Hanukkah that could maybe show us if Jesus would come back on Hanukkah. Sometimes I'm not sure with the holidays if, like, the holiday kind of gives us a picture of things that are going to happen. So maybe things don't necessarily have to happen on the particular holiday, but maybe God would give us pictures and then something would happen later. I'm not really sure about that. I mean, obviously, none of us are sure of that. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But there is a lot of significance in the dates of Hanukkah, the first day and the 8th day. Okay, and so let's talk about that. And so that's why I think these are high watch days. High watch days. Okay, for the Messiah. So the first thing I wanted to mention about Hanukkah is so I made these slides really quick. I'm traveling right now and just didn't have a lot of time to put into these slides as I normally would prefer. And so I guess before I get started, one of the other reasons why I'm really kind of looking for the Messiah in this season is that, I don't know about you, but like it just feels like things are revving up. The birth pangs are just getting closer and closer. I mean, even if you just look at the news, you talk about birth pangs, it's like, we used to have like some tragic events in our country would happen occasionally, like once in a while, and then it'd be a while before you hear about something. But we have had event after event after event, like, stacked on top of each other. So, there was the terrible parade, Christmas parade tragedy where people got run over by that car. There was, see, and now I don't even remember all of them. And so, if you just, are keeping an eye on the news, you could see that things are just, just happening all the time, just really quickly in quick succession. And we just don't have time to kind of get over one and process one before something new's happening. And so the same has been true, just like for my family personally. So maybe you've been noticing that too on a personal level, that your trials have been, closer together and stacked on top of each other and stuff. Because, my family has had a really crazy 2 months of just a lot going on. My mother had a fall, and a bunch of people in my family got COVID. Two different families got COVID in two different states. So just crazy, crazy, crazy. I did want to say, if you're watching this video, don't neglect getting your booster, because especially if you got the Pfizer vaccine, because they're seeing that while the Pfizer vaccine is very effective, it starts losing its efficiency after the 6-month mark. And so that information isn't really getting out. And so that's why we kind of got caught up in that. Family members, got COVID in my family because we weren't aware of that. And we were past the 6-month mark. And so a couple of people got COVID. And so make sure to get your vaccine. Don't let your guard down. And then now, too, in the world, they're talking about this new variant too with COVID. And I'm sure if you're like me, you're weary and tired of COVID, and just everything going on in the world. So that's the deal. And so, I used to keep track, like chart everything in the news on my calendars and stuff. And it just, everything got so crazy that I couldn't even keep track of everything. So it's just a crazy time in the world right now. One of the things I wanted to say, like, there's a lot of polarizing things that are happening in America. So we've had two court trials that were very polarizing. So we had the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, and then we had the Ahmaud Arbery, I can't say his name, trial, and it was kind of interesting because the verdicts kind of went, kind of two opposite ways. Um, just like the Rittenhouse trial probably made the people on the right happy, and then the Arbery trial made the people on the left happy. But just very polarizing trials. And so just to me, that's very interesting because I just really see this polarization happening in America, where you have, especially the extremes on the two sides. We read in Revelation about the city being divided into three. Um, and so that is really what's happening in America, that we kind of have three groups of people in America. Um, and I always say, like, the militant on the left and the militant on the right, and then I believe God's people are kind of in the middle, somewhere. Even though, we might have, some lost stragglers that are kind of like lost sheep that we need to kind of draw back from the crazy beliefs on the right and the crazy beliefs on the left. So then now let's get into Hanukkah. So one of the things about Hanukkah is that so Hanukkah is the Jewish holiday um, that usually happens around November or December. And so they've kind of called it the Jewish Christmas. And the kind of a joke with the Jewish people is, instead of one day of presents, they have 8 days of presents. And so Hanukkah has a lot to do with the oil is a very strong symbol for Hanukkah. There's a dreidel. They play dreidel on Hanukkah. And so obviously we don't have time to go into great detail about everything. But one of the things, so Hanukkah is an 8-day festival, and it's not really listed in the Torah, but we do see in the New Testament that Jesus was in the temple for the Feast of Dedication, okay, which is Hanukkah. So Hanukkah is called the Feast of Dedication. And then, so the rabbis have this debate of whether Hanukkah should be a holiday of increasing light or decreasing light. And so that has to do with when you light the candles, the tradition really is increasing the light in the candles. And so each day you light another candle, okay? But what's interesting is that there is, at least one rabbi, I don't know, like, how many people kind of follow this, but he had the belief that you should be decreasing, like start the first day with all 8 lights lit. I mean, which would be 9 total, actually. And then decrease a candle each day. So to me, I find that fascinating because I think there is, so I have this belief that Trump is like this false messianic figure. I believe he's the beast from the earth. And that what I think could be interesting during this Hanukkah is we could be seeing like Trump's decreasing light during this holiday at the same time that we're seeing Messiah's increasing light during this holiday. So like if Messiah comes and or maybe we just see the decreasing light of Trump. So we'll just have to see. So because what's very fascinating to me is that the last day of Hanukkah is on December 6th, okay? And so that's the 8th day of Hanukkah is December 6th. And so the Jewish people call the last day of Hanukkah Zot Hanukkah, or probably maybe like Zot Hanukkah, Hanukkah. And so that like kind of loosely translates to this is Hanukkah. And I always thought that was kind of cool because you had you had the full menorah shining, and to say this is Hanukkah, it's like you see the fullness of the light of Messiah, on the last day of Hanukkah. So it's fascinating to me that it ends up on uh, December 6th, okay? Because remember, in 2017, that was December 6th was when Trump made his announcement that he was moving the embassy to Jerusalem, okay? And so I thought that was kind of interesting because maybe what we could be seeing is if we're going to see the full light of the Messiah, this could be God's way of saying, this is the true Hanukkah, Jesus is the true Hanukkah Messiah, and Trump isn't. Okay, Trump is the false Messiah, okay, which a lot of people are following him like he's a messianic figure. I mean, they may not call him a messianic figure, but they talk about him being Cyrus. I mean, they treat him like a messianic figure, even though in their minds they may not even be aware that they're acting like he's the Messiah. But they compared him to Cyrus, and they think he's God's chosen one, to lead, this country in this time and season. So it's kind of interesting because, I do kind of see in the scriptures, there's kind of a lot of these shadows of, I think we saw, okay, a good example is John the Baptist compared to Jesus, okay? And John the Baptist says, I must decrease and he must increase, okay? So there are kind of these shadows of a figure that, comes before the Messiah who needs to decrease so that the Messiah, can take his rightful place, okay? So definitely very interesting. And then what's interesting about Hanukkah too is that the Jewish people, so they have the dreidel, and there's 4 letters on the dreidel, Hebrew letters, and they spell out a great miracle happened there. So that would be for the outside of Israel, and then inside of Israel, the dreidels would have 4 letters that mean a great miracle happened here. Okay. So there's definitely sort of this expectation with the holiday of it's a time of a great miracle happening. And so I think that's really fascinating. The fact that the dreidel has 4 sides. Okay, so they have a song where they have a dreidel made out of clay and it has 4 sides. So the clay could definitely be a shadow, a picture of God's people. The 4 sides of the dreidel could be a picture of how God's people are scattered to the 4 corners of the world. Okay, and we know in the end times the Messiah is going to come and gather all of God's people from the 4 corners of the world. Okay, so interesting that we see the dreidel as a game that gets played during Hanukkah. Okay, so gathering his elect from the 4 corners of the earth. Okay. And then the story of Hanukkah too is very connected to the last days, in the coming of the Messiah. So definitely a lot of messianic shadows in the story of Hanukkah. Of you know, of what a lot of messianic shadows in what happened when Hanukkah came about back in the middle, 2,000 years ago or however long it was. So we'll talk about a little bit of the story of Hanukkah on the next slide. I mean, you know how all these things you could take, just a long time discussing each one, but trying to give a quick overview, which is not my strength, but we'll give it a try. So what's interesting too is on the Jewish calendar, during Hanukkah, we move from the 9th month to the 10th month. So the 9th month's kind of interesting because 9 kind of connects to the birthing time. And then the 10th month, we read a bunch about the 10th month in the scriptures. Esther goes to the king in the 10th month. Um, so that's what's happening on the Jewish calendar. The Gregorian calendar, we're moving from the 11th month to the 12th month during Hanukkah. Okay, from November to December. Okay. So what's interesting about that is that 11 to me kind of connects to judgment. Okay. And then 12 we know is kind of like the number of completion because you have the 12 tribes of Israel. God completed his nation with 12 tribes. So that's interesting too. Okay. Um, okay. So then this is the story of Hanukkah. Okay, well actually, okay, so Hanukkah, the first day of Hanukkah tomorrow is Kislev 25. Okay, and um um so one of the things just that um on the Jewish calendar, they believe that the Mishkan, okay, which that would be the tabernacle, um, the temporary tabernacle that they carried around in the wilderness. They, the Jewish people believe that it was completed on the 25th of Kislev in 1312 BCE. Okay, but then they also say it wasn't assembled, however, until 3 months later, closer to the beginning of the year, closer to Nisan. Okay, um, and so they say the vessels, tapestries, wall sections, and other components of the Mishkan, um, the portable sanctuary or tabernacle built under Moses' direction to house the divine presence during the Israelites' journey through the desert, were completed on the 25th of Kislev. Okay. Um, okay. And so then so that supposedly happened on that day. Okay. And then moving to the Hanukkah story. So they say the Hanukkah America in 139 BCE. They say on the 25th of Kislev in the year 3622 from creation, the Maccabees liberated the Holy Temple in Jerusalem after defeating the vastly more numerous and powerful armies of the Syrian Greek king Antiochus IV, who had tried to forcefully uproot the beliefs and practices of Judaism from the people of Israel. The victorious Jews repaired, cleansed, and rededicated the temple to the service of God. But all the temple's oil had been defiled by the pagan invaders. When the Jews sought to light the temple's menorah, they found only one small cruse of ritually pure olive oil. Miraculously, the 1 day supply burned for 8 days until new pure oil could be obtained. In commemoration, the sages instituted the 8-day festival of Hanukkah, on which lights are kindled nightly to recall and publicize the miracle. Okay, so see that miracle? And so the story really connects to our day because we do have people in the world right now that are trying to forcefully uproot God's people from, obviously God's ways and God's people from. We have it happening both in America and in Israel. Okay. And so we have a lot of other people that are kind of rising up to power and pushing God's people out of the way. So this has actually been going on for a while now. And so we're really losing true, pure Christianity in this country, and then also true, pure Judaism in Israel, um, you know, and also here too, also in America, um, you know, and so like we really see with like Biden's administration, they're really trying to push out kind of the democratically based, um, the Christian based belief system and like rule of law in America and replace it with this socialistic uh, I don't know what you call it, belief system, way of governing, and they really want to like take I mean, they're really stealing from God's people because they want to take the money of America and use it for their socialistic um, and other evil, wicked beliefs, um, around the world. They want to use the money for their um, agenda, what they want to accomplish. So definitely a repeat in history. I mean, God says there's nothing new under the sun, and there isn't anything under the sun. There's always enemies rising up against God's people, trying to, you know, put their way of life, trying to squash, you know, God's people and their way of life and bring in their own evil, wicked agenda. Okay, so repeat of history. And then today, which is Sunday, the 28th of November, Kislev 24 is the first day of Advent on the Christian calendar. Okay, so I thought that was interesting because we kind of see this thing with um, you have the 24th of Kislev moving into the 25th of Kislev. And so you kind of see a little bit of the repeat of that picture of Christmas Eve moving into Christmas. Like the 24th is the Eve, Hanukkah Eve. And then the first day of Hanukkah is the 25th, like Christmas is on the 25th. Okay. And so I've been complaining for a while that I haven't seen God shortening the days. And so if God actually does send the Messiah on Hanukkah, like maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, I don't know, then it's almost like he's given us Christmas a month early, kind of, sort of, you know, a little less than a month. So kind of interesting. And so Advent is the 4 Sundays before Christmas. The first Sunday. This is the first Sunday of the 4 before Christmas. But at the very least, if Messiah doesn't come back on this Hanukkah, we do kind of see shadows, really maybe pointing to Christmas. Okay. And it's been kind of interesting with Thanksgiving on Thursday. There was a bunch of people that were, I saw when I was driving on my trip before Thanksgiving, there was already Christmas lights out. And so people were already lighting their lights. I think people might be depressed and wanting to put up their Christmas lights early to kind of cheer them up or something. So that was kind of interesting. And it's interesting, too, that Thanksgiving fell on November 25th, exactly 1 month before Christmas. So then also on Kislev 24 of last year was when, I haven't had a chance to check this, but I think what it is that was the time that Trump made the Morocco quote-unquote peace deal. I don't think I spelled Morocco right, but so that was a year ago. So today would be the 1 year anniversary on the Hebrew calendar. A year ago on the Hebrew calendar was when the emergency vaccine use was approved. Okay. So today was kind of a significant day on the Hebrew calendar. Today is also 9 months, 11 days from February 18th. Okay. Now, February 18th was when Biden said he was planning to restart the nuclear talks with Iran. Well, so I didn't notice this till I was putting the slide together. But that was the week that Texas had that freak winter storm. Just like unprecedented winter storm. And they had all those power outages and, which caused all the pipes to freeze and stuff like that. And, so the Biden kind of announced in the middle of that he was going to restart nuclear talks with Iran. Well, I believe that sometimes judgment, since God knows what we're planning to do, sometimes he brings judgment a little early. So, so a couple days before Biden made this announcement, God was already causing power outages to happen in Texas. Okay. So now let's think about this because this is really interesting. So if you follow, okay, so the nuclear talks relate to the JCPOA that Obama set up. It's, the Iran deal. Most people just call it the Iran deal. He set it up with Iran, and, it was just not a lot of people really liked it because they felt like it would allow Iran to continue, that it wasn't strong enough to keep Iran from building a nuclear weapon. Well, what's interesting about Iran is that they have been claiming all this time that they're just doing nuclear stuff. They want to just do nuclear stuff because they want it for power. Okay. So I thought that was interesting that we were seeing power outages in Texas. Okay. Definitely very interesting. Okay. And so then you see the 9/11 there. So that's very interesting today. Because I talked a lot about 9/11, so that's very interesting. And then, okay, so then talking about this peace deal, what's very interesting is that tomorrow, the 29th, is they're planning to restart the Iran talks. So I don't know if you've been following the current um, what's been going on with the Iran talks, but basically they've been having meetings in, I think, Vienna, to try to restart this. Okay, so the history of the JCPOA is, you know, Obama under Kerry established it. Okay, and then when Trump came, he said this was bad, and he pulled America out of the JCPOA, and then instead he put sanctions on Iran. Okay. And so then when Biden came, he said he wanted to reestablish it because one of the problems that they have is uh, no one can get into Iran to actually look at what nuclear capability they have. Okay, and they keep saying, and you know, it keeps getting closer and closer, but they keep saying that. I mean, it seems like it was a month ago where they said in one more month Iran's going to have enough nuclear material for a nuclear weapon. Um, you know, and so like that window is getting shorter. I mean, now if you talk to them, they might still be saying a month from now. You know, I mean, the bottom line is no one knows for sure because Iran keeps, you know, like stalling and keeps trying to keep the inspectors out of there. And Iran is really good at manipulating um, and you know, just trying to get their way and trying to hide things, and they damaged the monitoring equipment. You know, so you cannot trust Iran. Okay. Um, and so they've had 6 rounds of talk, I believe is the number, 6 or 7. And and they keep saying, oh, we're getting closer to, you know, being done, you know, reestablishing the JCPOA. But they had the, at the end of the 6th round or the 7th round, they stopped the talks, and that had a little bit to do with they got a new government in Iran. They got this really evil, racy guy in Iran, and so it was like so Iran used that as an excuse to postpone the talks, and just said, well, we're trying to get used to our new government, but even after like a month or whatever, they kept pushing it and pushing it. And so then they came up with this date of November 29th, tomorrow. Okay, they're supposed to restart the talks. Okay, so I thought that was kind of interesting because to me, I'm wondering if that's the peace and safety. So while they're saying peace and safety, because they really are saying that with the Iran deal. Okay, a lot of people believe if we could just reestablish the Iran deal with Iran, then we'll all be peace, and you know, there'll be peace and safety in the Middle East, and we don't have to worry about Iran. But if you understand that you can't trust Iran, it's just all uh, an illusion. You know, I mean, it's an illusion of peace, is really what it is. Okay, and it was that same way when Obama first set it up. So while they are saying peace and safety, then destruction will come upon them suddenly like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. Okay. So wondering if that's connected. Okay. What the other interesting thing about November 29th is that was when okay, so let me read this to you. On November 29th, 1947, a 2,000-year-old dream became a reality. A Jewish state was born anew in the ancient homeland. On that day, the UN General Assembly voted on Resolution 181, adopting a plan to partition the British Mandate into 2 states, one Jewish and one Arab. So that was this. Tomorrow's the anniversary of the date of the British Mandate, okay, or the partition plan or whatever they call it. So, well, what's interesting to me is that if you look at the number resolution 181, it's like you have 8 in the middle of two ones. Okay, so kind of like an 811. Okay, so I highlighted the 8 because that connects to the 8-day Hanukkah holiday. So that was 74 years ago. If you add 7 plus 4, that makes an 11, which is judgment. In Daniel, we read about like 70 years plus 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. Okay. Well, we know that Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem on the 70th year anniversary. We were all looking for the Messiah then. But the true Messiah didn't come then. Even though some people think, because of what Trump did, I don't know, kind of like they found their Messiah then. But the angel in Daniel 9 says, no, there's still going to be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And so I'm wondering if the 7 weeks connects to the quote unquote return of Biden, and then the 62 weeks connects to the return of Trump. Because see, with 62, if Trump's number is 6, and then you have that 2 there, it's like the second time of Trump. Okay, is what I'm wondering. Okay. And I think there's this whole thing with 7 connected to Biden in the Bible that I don't totally quite get. We had 8 years of Obama, but I kind of think God considers it like 7 years, kind of. Maybe there was 7 years where that was when Obama had the most power to do things, and then, then God kind of brought Trump onto the scene. Anyways, but I definitely think the 7 connects to Biden and Obama. And then what's interesting about 1129, just that date itself, is that the 29 you could add together and make it 11. And so it would be 1111. And then what's interesting about 1947 is that you add that together too and get 11. And so that's interesting because the 47 connects to the 74 years. Okay, so maybe some more clues pointing to the state. Okay, so I put these verses in here. So let's talk about these verses. 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end to sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So you are to know and discern from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince. There will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing. And the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And its end with a flood, even to the end of reward, desolations are determined. And he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. Earlier in the chapter, it talks about the 70 years, and then we're talking about the 70 weeks. So the 70 weeks could connect to the 70 years. It also could connect to, there was definitely something significant, and I can't remember now, that happened 70 weeks after the 70 weeks after the deal of the century. Okay, Trump's quote unquote deal of the century. I think that was actually when Netanyahu lost power in Israel. But we'll have to revisit that some other time. I think I have it in one of my other videos. Okay. So anyways, but we've seen the fulfillment, I believe, of the 70 weeks. I mean, different fulfillments, I always believe in multiple fulfillments for the things in scripture. And then I talked about the 7 weeks being connected to the time of Biden, the 62 weeks in a symbolic way. It's not literal. Okay. And then the 62 weeks symbolically connected to Trump. And then it says it will be built again with plaza and moat. Okay. So I'm wondering is, so when it talks about it being built again, okay, when it mentions the plaza kind of relates to the city. It's the, kind of like connects to the downtown area of the city. Okay. And so what I've kind of decided is that it's possible in scripture that the prophetic shadows are the cities. When we read about the city and stuff, that connects to Biden, and the tower connects to Trump. Okay. And so we see in Genesis 11 that God comes down to see the city and the tower that was built. Okay. Um, so I definitely think there's prophetic shadows about two different things going on. Some group of people building a city and some group of people building a tower. Okay. And so the tower too with Trump would even connect to, a tower would be something that goes into the sky. Okay. And so just how they want to, you know, um, lift up Trump, as, you know, kind of a heavenly figure, a messianic heavenly figure. Okay. So that would connect to that tower picture. Okay. Um, And so it says it would be built again with plaza and moat, even in times of distress. So what's interesting is that would connect to the plaza would connect to the second time frame of Obama, through Biden's presidency, and then the moat would connect to the second time frame of Trump. Okay, in times of distress. Okay. Then it says after the 62 weeks, so maybe during the second time frame of Trump. Okay, so it says the Messiah, but the literal word actually means anointed one. Okay, so if you recognize that God is the one who puts kings into positions of power, Biden would be the current anointed one in America, that he is the one that God has allowed to be in power right now. And so what we're going to have is that what I believe is that Trump's people are going to come and try to uh, pull him out of his position of power. They're going to pull him down. Okay. It says after the 62 weeks, the Messiah, the anointed one, will be cut off and have nothing. Okay. So Biden and his people are going to be cut off by Trump's people. Okay. And then it says, because read this, it says, the people of the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And it's end with a flood. Until the end there be war. Desolations are determined. Okay. So I think it's the eighth king that talks about the eighth king coming to cause destruction. Okay, but we also read in here that there is a prince who's going to come, who's going to cause destruction to the city and the sanctuary. Okay, so I believe the destructive prince who is to come is Trump. Okay, um, and so it talks about a flood coming, war coming, desolations are determined. Okay, and then it says he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. So that, like I said, the number 7, that's a week is 7 days. That could connect to Biden, where God allowed Biden to come back, in kind of a 1 week time frame symbolically. Um, which I talked about this before, where 7 connects to the number of completion. So really, God allowed Biden to return to make a fullness of the sin, to finish Obama's plans. So there's a fullness of their sins. Okay. God always kind of allows a fullness of the sins before he brings judgment. Okay. So Biden came back to finish what Obama was trying to accomplish. And now that they have the fullness of their sins, God will bring judgment. Okay. And then it says in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. Well, we did see that with Biden, that if you see sacrifice and grain offering being um, the um, the people in the military that are willing to sacrifice their lives and offer up their lives as a grain offering to God in service of um, you know our country and in service of God, in through the military, Then Biden put a stop to that in Afghanistan. He pulled the troops out of Afghanistan, and really they were doing a great service to us by keeping ISIS and the Taliban in check. And they were doing a great service to Israel by keeping those people in check. And Biden just made a mess of it. Okay. And then so it says on the wing of abomination. So that would be on the wing of, so I guess like on the wing of Biden's abominations, then we're going to see one who comes who's going to make desolate. Okay. So, so like I said, that I think now, okay, so we've seen the fullness of Biden's sin. And so then there's going to be judgment for him. And then what's going to happen is then Trump returns and we're going to see the fullness of his sins, and it's going to be destruction. I think they're going to bring destruction to America. Okay. Even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. Okay. And we're actually, I believe we're going to see a parallel with the followers of Netanyahu in Israel, because there's the parallels between what's happening in America and what's happening in Israel are just uncanny. Okay. So there's just a group of rebels in America that are following Trump, and a group of rebels in Israel that are following Netanyahu, and just really kind of waiting for the word from them to rise up against the government in their country. So just very dangerous and scary. So the other thing about the dates is November 29th is the 10th month, the 10th day of Biden. Okay, so we see in the scripture that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, comes against Jerusalem and builds a siege wall all around it. Okay, so it says in the 9th year of his reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, camped against it, and built a siege wall around it. Okay, so it's interesting that it says 9th year, because that could be like the 8th year of Obama plus the, sort of a 1 year of Biden. Actually, it is 1 year if you count from the time he was voted in. And then, so the 10th day of the 10th month. I was looking at October 10th to see if it was going to happen then. And I was looking for the 10th day of the 10th month. Oh, actually, that's coming up next month on the Hebrew calendar. And so if something doesn't happen during Hanukkah, which I'd be surprised about, that would be the next date to look at. And then the date I would look at after that would be Christmas, if something doesn't happen then. But it says, and so this Nebuchadnezzar figure, if you kind of read about it, I see maybe a shadow of Trump in the sky. Okay, so he comes, his whole army against Jerusalem. They camp against it. They build a siege wall around it. We find it at like at least 3 different places of scripture. This one event is talked about. So it's a very important event in history in the Bible. Okay, so then in Jeremiah 52, we read again where it says, it came about in the 9th year of his reign, on the 10th day of the 10th month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, camped against it, and built a siege wall around it. So the city was under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city, there was no food for the people of the land. And so actually, scripture talks about, it mentions a famine, but scripture talks about a famine for the hearing of the word of God. Okay. So that's kind of interesting. So we may not have like famine where we can't eat food here, but we definitely have a famine for hearing God's word in this country. Okay, and then it says, then the city was broken into, and all the men of war fled, and went forth from the city at night by way of the gate between the 2 walls, which was by the king's garden, though the Chaldeans were all around the city. And they went by way of the Arabah, but the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. Then they captured the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon at Riblah in the land of Hamath, and he passed sentence on him. So I think it's possible this could be a prophetic shadow of how Trump's people are going to, like maybe attack Washington, D.C. to try to capture Biden. And then I think Biden's people will be so scared because it talks about them fleeing. Well, it's interesting. It says all the men of war fled and went forth from the city at night by way of the gate. So it's interesting. They've been kind of talking about that there are like people in the military that are Trump followers. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. But then it's interesting too, where it talks about they fled by way of the gate between the two walls. Okay. And so, that's almost kind of a 9/11 shadow with the two walls or the two towers. Okay. Um, anyways, and then it says all his army was scattered from him. So, is Biden's army going to be scattered? Okay. Are they going to overtake Biden and capture him? Okay. So we'll have to see if that gets fulfilled and how it gets fulfilled. I talked about, to me, it's just fascinating, kind of all the shadows in the Back to the Future movie, and it's kind of fun to look at. And so we do see in the movie this concept of the twin pines becoming the lone pine. Okay. Which definitely connects to the 9/11 picture of 9/11 2001. The Twin Towers fell. They were rebuilt to be the one World Trade Center. Okay. And so what I think right now is in this country, we sort of have the twin pines. Okay. That we have Trump with his followers on one side being a pine, and then we have Biden and his followers being the pine on the other side. Okay. And Jesus is always in the middle. Okay. But what we have is one of the pines ends up falling. Okay. And it's interesting because then, is this the next slide? We see this connection with the lone pine to kind of the number 1335. Okay. Which is just very fascinating because that's a number we find in Daniel. Okay. So I don't know what I was going to say about this slide. Just that we see on the 9/11 clues, and it's interesting because the 9/11 clues are kind of upside down. Okay. In this movie, which is kind of fascinating. Okay. So that's interesting. So almost like you need help with someone to turn it right side up so you could see the truth about the signs. Okay. Definitely a picture of what Jesus would do for us. Okay, so I wanted to show you this because, I was, a lot of times when I make a slide, I just kind of take the last slideshow that I did and then just dump out a bunch of slides. And so I ended up keeping some of these because I was like, oh my gosh, I noticed things, when I was doing this Hanukkah video. Okay, so I really like this picture from Back to the Future, okay? Because, I believe it shows us the 9/11. You have nine's kind of the heavenly number. It's up on the Western Auto. There's basically this big arrow that looks like a 9 that's pointing into the Western Auto shop. And it's up on the buildings. And then the 11 made by the flames after the tire tracks is down on the ground. Okay. So, I said this was a very prophetical picture because the 9 is the heavenly picture. Because I kind of think like 9/11 is like 9 is like Jesus in the middle of the two towers or the two ones. Okay. And then especially too, like if Trump is the 8th king, then, Messiah could be the 9th king. But I also wonder if Messiah is considered an 8th king. I don't know. I don't, I'm not quite sure about that. Um, because it does say about the eighth king that, he's also an eighth. Okay. And so, because I do think there's a lot in scripture where it's the coming of the Messiah is going to happen the same time as the eighth king. So they could both be considered an eighth king, or the Messiah is also considered the ninth king. Okay. Um, I guess it just depends on how you chart it out. But okay, so the 9 is heavenly, it's up on the buildings. The 11 is earthly, it's down on the ground. But what's fascinating too is that you got the burning wire going across. That's the one the car drove under, to catch the power from the lightning. And so it's interesting that it cuts across the tire tracks in this shot. And what does it look like? It almost looks like a giant burning H. Okay, so maybe that's a picture that God gave us in this movie. Okay, and it's interesting too because it's kind of the flames are driving you into the downtown area. Okay, and I told you that. So then, what happens is Marty switches back to 1985, and this theater that it's a theater back in the 1950s. When he goes back to 1985, it's actually an Assemblies of Christ church. Okay, so it's like these two tire tracks are leading to the Assemblies of Christ. Okay, so remember, Jesus assembles, God's people from the four corners of the earth. So fascinating, just fascinating stuff. Um, and so, it could be that we are out of time with the flames on the right and the flames on the left, the burning on the right and the burning on the left, or the gnashing of teeth on the right and the gnashing of teeth on the left. So this is from Daniel's statue. Um, so let's see. I put in BLM being the legs of iron. I don't know. I might have to rethink about that, like how the legs work out. Well, when Jesus comes, maybe he can help us sort it out. We do read about the feet and the toes. I mean, I really think in prophetic history, we're down to the feet and the toes. Okay. The feet and the toes are part iron and part clay. It's a divided kingdom. Okay. So we have America as a divided kingdom. I mean, definitely. Okay. I mean, Israel's a divided kingdom, definitely. And then we have, so some people are iron and some people are clay. So if the clay connects to the God's people, the iron would connect to like iron kind of connects to rebellion. Okay. So maybe Trump's people would be the iron and then God's people would be the clay. Okay. And so that would be a picture of like the wheat and the tares. But you also see a division between Trump's people and Biden's people too, obviously. So that would be symbolic of, that would be shown by the right foot and the left foot. And the valley kind of in between the legs, in between the feet, would, like I said, Jesus is always in the middle. Okay. So we have Reagan being the 40-year warning. Okay, so this is where we read. Okay, so we had Donald Trump was the sixth king. Okay, Biden is the seventh king. Okay, so then it talks about does Donald Trump return and the Messiah. Okay, so are we going to see the eighth king on the 8-day festival of Hanukkah? Okay, and so we read about this in Revelation 17. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. They are 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain a little while. That's Biden. Okay, we're just going to have him for a short time. He's not going to live out his full term, is what I believe. And then it says, the beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th and is of the 7, and he goes to destruction. Okay, so the beast which was and is not. Okay, so what I believe is that Trump is the beast from the earth. Okay, because the 666 connects to the beast of the earth. Okay, the beast of the sea, we don't read about his number in Revelation. Well, actually, I mean, I think, like I said, it could connect to the number 7 because I think the beast from the sea has the 7 heads. Okay, which I think connects to the 7 country, the uh, could connect to the 70 nations. Okay. Um, anyways, so I kind of talked about that in earlier videos. Um, but Trump is this, 6th and the 8th is what I believe those numbers connect to Trump. And so see what it says about this 8th king. Okay, so he was and then is not. Okay, so during the time of Biden, he loses his power, but then he comes back. Okay, the beast which was and is not is himself also an 8th and is of the 7, and he goes to destruction. Okay, so the 8th king, whoever that is going to be a king of destruction. Okay. Um, so, anyways, and so the context of these verses come out of when the Bible's talking about Babylon. Okay, and then we have Nebuchadnezzar is kind of the ruler of Babylon. Okay, so I think there's some connection there. Okay. All right. Well, so this is the slide of the 1335 where I wanted to mention. See how, okay, you see Marty walking on the side of the sign. His name has 5 letters. And you see the 133 and then the Marty with the 5. So in Daniel 12, it says, how blessed is he who keeps waiting and attains to the 1335 days. But as for you, go your way to the end. Then you will enter into rest and rise again for your allotted portion at the end of the age. Okay. So don't, so I'm kind of thinking that we're not supposed to attain to the 1335 days. I see a connection with the 1335 and Trump. Okay. And that the angel actually tells Daniel to wait and go his way to the end. Okay. And so that's what we need to do. Don't think you have peace under Trump. Okay. Don't be looking for peace under Trump and resting under Trump. You need to wait till the Messiah comes, and then we will enter into rest. Okay. Too many people are like living in their rest under Trump. Okay. And then let's see, is there anything new here? So the Marty actually ends up cutting down, not running over one of the pines. Okay. So let's see, when there's trouble. Okay, I think I meant to delete that slide. And here's that again. Okay. So what was interesting in the movies is they went into the future on October 21st, and I'll show you on a slide. There's kind of a significant with that date, and I don't think I'm seeing the whole thing of what was the significance with October 21st, especially this year. But what's interesting is that 2015, if you add those up, it adds up to 8, and dark brown adds up to 8. Okay. So we see that connection to Hanukkah. And then, yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Okay, so then this is from Joel. Okay, so let's read this. For behold, in those days and at that time when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem. So see how there's like 2 things listed there? I think Judah would connect to the nation of Israel and Jerusalem would connect to America. Okay, he's got to restore our fortunes. Okay, I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Then I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my inheritance Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and they have divided up my land. They have also cast lots for my people, and traded a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine that they may drink. Moreover, what are you to me, O Tyre, Sidon, and all the regions of Philistia? Philistia, are you rendering me a recompense? But if you do recompense me swiftly and speedily, I will return your recompense on your head. Since you have taken my silver and my gold, brought my precious treasures to your temples, and sold the sons of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks in order to remove them far from their territory, behold, I am going to arouse them from the place where you have sold them, and return your recompense on your head. Also, I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hands of the sons of Judah, and they will sell them to the Sabeans, to a distant nation, for the Lord has spoken. Proclaim this among the nations. Prepare a war. Rouse the mighty men. Let all the soldiers draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am a mighty man. Um, so, let's see. So we see God's judgment is going to come because of how people treated his people. Okay. And, he said they have scattered his people among the nations and they have divided up my land. Okay. So we saw that happening with Israel. Trump's deal of the century was going to divide up the land. The various peace deals were with nations that wanted to create a Palestinian state. But we've also seen Biden doing that in America, where he's dividing up America. Um, where he's taking the riches of America, for his agenda around the world. Um, he's opening up the border for other, people to come in. So I think the judgment for division of land, and actually what we saw too is that Biden actually gave Afghanistan to the Taliban. Okay. Um, so we saw that happening. Um, so, you know, I think there's a lot of things that God is saying in these verses that I'm not totally getting right now. But okay, so and then then there's this part. Since you have taken my silver and my gold and brought my precious treasures to your temples. Okay, that's definitely what Biden is doing. And then it says, sold the sons of Judah and Jerusalem to the Greeks in order to remove them far from your territory. I think I might have read that and thought that connected to Trump for a second or two. But now I'm not getting it right now how they're connected. So those are those verses. So definitely, God says, prepare a war, rouse the mighty men, beat your plowshares into swords. Okay. So Trump's people right now that have a lot of riches and stuff, they, they're no longer going to be farming. They're going to be going to war. Okay. Okay, so then it says, hasten and come, all you surrounding nations, and gather yourselves there. Bring down, O Lord, your mighty ones. Let the nations be aroused, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there I will sit to judge all the surrounding nations. Put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, tread, for the winepress is full. So see, that connects to the fullness of the sin, okay? The vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Okay, the fullness of sin. Okay, multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon grow dark, and the stars lose their brightness. So it's possible that the sun could be a picture of Biden, the moon could be a picture of Trump growing dark. Okay, and then the stars would be their followers losing their brightness. The Lord roars from Zion and utters his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth tremble. But the Lord is a refuge for his people and a stronghold to the sons of Israel. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. So Jerusalem will be holy, and strangers will pass through it no more. Okay? um, so no longer have a refugee problem. And in that day, or no longer have a problem of people that don't belong to God. And we no longer will have people that don't love America in America. Okay? And in that day the mountains will drip with sweet wine, the hills will flow with milk, and the brooks of Judah will flow with water. And a spring will go out from the house of the Lord to water the valley of Shittim. Egypt will become a waste, and Edom will become a desolate wilderness. So it seems like there's always two groups listed. So we got Egypt and Edom, okay? Because of the violence done to the sons of Judah, in whose land they have shed innocent blood. But Judah will be inhabited forever, and Jerusalem for all generations. And then you see the Judah and Jerusalem, kind of like they're two different things. So Judah would be Israel, and Jerusalem will be um, America. And I will avenge their blood, which I have not avenged, for the Lord dwells in Zion. So what's kind of interesting is that, okay, so it talks about the violence done to the sons of Judah. I mean, really, some of it, if you follow the history of Israel, or if you follow the news from Israel, I mean, they have had constant rockets, being sent from Gaza, into Israel. But also, too, we could maybe see some violence done with if Iran chooses to attack Israel. That's a possibility. Um, so we'll just have to see how it plays out. Okay, so I made this chart when I did the October 21st, when I did the Back to the Future video. And so it was fascinating because on 9/11 was 40 days before 10/21, and then 40 days later is Hanukkah day 1. Okay. I should have paid attention to this. I was really thinking something was going to happen on October 21st. Or maybe 20 days after October 21st, which was like 11/9 or whatever, because yeah, because that was an anniversary. That's the actual literal Gregorian anniversary of Kristallnacht. But Kristallnacht on the Hebrew calendar happened on the Hebrew date fell on 10/21. So we have this 40 days, 40 days. So it's actually 80 days from 9/11 to 11/29. Okay, so that's fascinating. And actually 80 days before 9/11 was when we had the Surfside condo collapse, which was pretty significant. And that happened the same day as Biden's big infrastructure bill. So that was interesting because it's like the infrastructure of this building fell apart and the building collapsed. Okay. And then 8 weeks before 9/11 was the 9th of Av. So definitely some interesting stuff going on with the calendar. Okay. And then I don't want to talk about that. Okay. So then let's talk about this thief in the night. Okay. Now, as to the times and the epochs, brethren, you have no need of anything to be written to you, for you yourselves know full well that the day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. Okay? While they are saying peace and safety, and then destruction will come upon them suddenly, like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. But, okay, so let's talk about those verses. So I highlighted day of the Lord, and then I highlighted thief in the night. And so it is highly possible that the day of the Lord is the exact same day as the thief in the night. Okay. I mean, we definitely already see just kind of this contrast where the Lord is connected to the day and the thief is connected to the night. So there's that happening, but it's possible that the day of the Lord is the same time the thief in the night shows up. Okay. And I really think the thief in the night is Trump wanting to steal the presidency back. Okay. And then it's fascinating because it says, while they are saying peace and safety, then destruction will come upon them suddenly like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape. So definitely, like I said, that connects to 1129 when they're trying to get back together to talk about the Iran deal. Okay. Okay. But then it says to us, you brethren are not in darkness, that the day would overtake you like a thief. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us be alert and sober. For those who sleep do their sleeping at night. So, it talks about there's going to be these people that are in darkness, okay? And so I believe that's the deluding influence that we read about in scripture, and that, I call it the deluding influence of Trump, okay? Because we have this group of people that follow Trump, and they think the election was stolen, and they think the COVID is made up, or something. And so they believe a lot of conspiracy theories. Okay, some of them believe JFK is going to come back and be Trump's uh, vice president. I'm just some bizarre, weird conspiracy theories, which would happen for people that are under this deluding influence, okay, that we read about. So we shouldn't be shocked because we read about a deluding influence in the last days, okay? And then it says, for those who sleep, do their sleeping at night. So I think Trump's peeps are sleeping at night. And those who get drunk at night. I think that connects to Biden and his peeps, because I think Biden is Belshazzar. They're drinking of the best golden vessels of the temple, getting drunk. And so they're getting drunk off the riches of America. Okay. But since we are of the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet. So you want a helmet, the hope of salvation, to protect you from this deluding influence. Okay? Have hope in God's salvation so you don't fall under the trance of these conspiracy theories in the world. Okay? You don't have to, and you don't have to be afraid either of all the crazy stuff that Biden's doing, because we can trust that God's going to save us. Okay? For God has not destined us for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we will live together with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build up one another, just as you are also doing. So I had a few more verses about the thief in the night. In Hosea 7, it says, when I would heal Israel, the iniquity of Ephraim is uncovered, and the evil deeds of Samaria, for they deal falsely. The thief enters in, bandits raid outside, and they do not consider in their hearts that I remembered all their wickedness. Now their deeds are all around them. They are before my face. So that really connects to what I said. We're going to see the fullness of sin. We're going to see the fullness of Trump's and his followers' sin. So, God says when he's going to heal Israel, then the iniquity of Ephraim is uncovered. So what if Ephraim right here in these verses are connecting to Trump's people? And so their iniquity is going to be uncovered. The day of the Lord is going to be the day of the thief in the night, and their sins are going to be uncovered. They're going to be seen as rebellious and thieves and destructive, and lawbreakers and lawlessness. And then it also says the evil deeds of Samaria will also be uncovered. That could connect to Biden, okay? Because it says, for they deal falsely. The thief enters in, bandits raid outside. See if that describes the last days, the day of the Lord, and they do not consider in their hearts that I remember all their wickedness. No one's thinking about God and his judgment, okay? I mean, of, Ephraim and Samaria, okay? But God's people are. Now their deeds are all around and they are before my face, okay? So we also read in Joel about, okay, so it says they rush on the city, they run on the wall, they climb into the houses, they enter through the windows like a thief, okay? So I thought this verse was interesting because I think that Messiah is the door and Trump is the window, okay? And then in the last days, we have this picture of these people that are I mean, basically the rioters and protesters and vandals, um, you know, and uh, and acting like thieves. They want to steal back the country and the presidency. Okay, Trump's people, Trump's followers. Okay, so then, so then we have these verses from Matthew 24. Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So you too, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near at the door. Okay, Jesus is the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For in those days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then there be two men in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. Two women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one will be left. Therefore be on the alert, for you do not know which day your Lord is coming. But be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have been on the alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. For this reason you must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you do not think he will. Who then is the faithful and sensible slave whom his master put in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed that slave whose master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if that evil slave says in his heart, my master is not coming for a long time, and begins to beat his fellow slaves and eat and drink with drunkards, the master of the house will come on a day when he does not expect, and in an hour which he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay. So what I was kind of wondering, we heard a lot about the fig tree, and I read something about the Jewish people um, kind of seeing the fig tree as being a picture of peace. Okay. I mean, I always thought of the olive tree, olive branch being peace, but they look at the fig tree. Um, I mean, the fig tree, I mean, it could be both, but the fig tree they mentioned that being peace. And so it talks about putting forth its leaves. Okay, so I think that could be a picture of Trump, that he did put forth his leaves. We saw all his peace plans right? We saw all his peace plans last year, okay, that, he put forth, okay? And so I guess maybe last year was summer, okay, and then now we're probably in winter, okay? And then, so God says, when you see all these things, when you see some guy doing some peace plans, recognize that Jesus is near at the door. Okay, remember, Jesus is the door. Okay, and then, okay, it says the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For in those days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So we see like Biden's people are all, well, and Trump's people too, all eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage. Okay. But then what we're going to have is that it's kind of interesting, because you could look at Noah entering the ark being a picture of Trump, like entering, trying to like go into the White House to steal the presidency, but then it also could, but then the other picture, which I definitely think is true, is a picture of the Messiah entering the Ark of Protection while all this stuff happens in the last days, him and his people. Oh, and what's interesting too is that Noah, it's 8 people that get protected in the ark. So that's interesting too, another 8. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. Okay, so there be 2 men in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. So I wonder if Trump, I see a connection with maybe Trump being in the field. Okay, that's a whole another thing we could talk about sometime. Um, and so like one's taken and one's left. And so like the Trump followers will be taken, but then the Messiah followers will be left. Two women grinding at the mill, that could be Biden grinding at America. Same thing where, one, there's some people on the left that would, um, actually belong to Messiah, you know, but one will be taken, one will be left. Okay. And then it says, if the head of the house had not known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have been on the alert. Okay, the head of the house would be Biden. Okay, right now he's in charge of America. God has given him the presidency. And if he knew that Trump was coming, he should have been on the alert and not allowed his house to be broken into. But I think his house is going to be broken into. Okay. And then God's looking for the people that are protecting his people and feeding his people and giving them water and food. And then he's coming to judge the people that say, my master is not coming for a long time, and that start to beat their fellow slaves. Okay, so I actually think this could be a picture of Trump's people, where Trump's people are actually saying, my master is not coming for a long time. They're not expecting Jesus to come anytime soon. So they're trying to establish a kingdom under Trump. Okay. And so what they're going to do is they're going to come and they're going to beat, like Biden's followers, so they can establish, they could steal the presidency um, and the country back. Um, Anyways, so I think kind of we read a lot about the weeping and gnashing of teeth. I think those could be the last days, you know, um, um, I mean, we've always kind of thought it connected to hell, but it could connect to what would be happening in the last days. Okay. I mean, gnashing of teeth could be people that are so angry at their enemies that they're willing to kill. Okay. So that could be a picture of both Trump's people and Biden's people. So, so like I said, I think the country's, divided into three. We want to be in the middle with Messiah. It says the great city, Revelation 16:19, the great city was split into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Okay, cities, like I said, the cities of the nations fell. That connects to Biden. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath. Okay, so that all connects to the cupbearer story, where the baker gets, killed and the cupbearer gets to return to his position. Okay, so God's going to put his fierce wrath into the cupbearer's hand. Okay, so Trump is going to actually, God's going to use, Trump, who, even though he's uh, a sinner, he's going to use Trump to bring some of his wrath at first, and so Trump might end up sort of cleaning up the place, and maybe the Messiah won't have to. I think then the Messiah comes and judges Trump's followers, is what I think happens. Okay, so will Hanukkah 2021 bring the Messiah? So the bottom line is we don't have that long to wait. Maybe something tonight. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But we don't know the day or the hour. We're not sure. But just kind of fascinating how the dates are falling. But like I said, if something does, I always have to be prepared. If something doesn't happen, I'm looking at 10:10 on the Hebrew calendar, the 10th month, the 10th day. But also Christmas could be an interesting day. Okay, let me see if I can find, just to get you prepared. So 10:10 would be the 14th of December. Okay, that's actually a fast day for the Jewish people, the fast of Tevet. December 14th is Tevet 10. That's 10:10 on the Hebrew calendar. Um, the other thing, one last thing too. So we saw Obama at COP29, and he was saying, stay angry, stay frustrated. Okay. We read about in Revelation about how there's three frogs that are gathering people for the war of the great day of the Lord. Okay. So I definitely think that Trump, when he was at this conference, COP29, which I don't know if that was that could have been the one about climate warming, the conference about climate warming. He was definitely gathering people for war. He's keeping his followers in a war state position. Okay. And then we have definitely seen Trump, um, he has very warlike words. Okay. And really, his followers, Trump has to do is say something and they will go to war. I actually saw a video of this guy, who claims to be a Christian, but the way he talks about Trump, um, he kind of really treats Trump like a messianic figure. And he actually did a video like, come back now, Trump, um, just the other day was his video. So his followers are really waiting for him to come back. And I mean, we already saw January 6th that they were willing to go to war on January 6th. So we definitely have seen how Trump has prepared his people for war. So there's like three frogs. So Netanyahu could be the third one. I've seen him in the Knesset. He definitely has war fighting words against the current government in Israel. So that could be the third one, or just in this country alone, you got Trump, Biden, and Obama could be the three frogs, connected to the three frogs, or just Trump, Biden, and Netanyahu. Um, so definitely, I mean, so many scriptures coming true. So I wish I had some pretty Hanukkah pictures to put in this, like just some really cool, like, I actually have a really cool picture with Hanukkah with all the lights, all the menorahs burning it just so bright, and so you might be able to look at some of my older videos where I talk about Hanukkah. They might be interesting. So that's what I got for you today. So really, I'm looking forward to seeing you on the other side after Messiah comes and we could actually all gather and worship God and talk about all these things for, a really long time without anyone stopping us. And so it'll be just so much fun to unpack all these prophecies, during the time of the Messiah. So I definitely appreciate you listening. So I wish you a happy belated Thanksgiving. I wish you a very happy Hanukkah. And I also just, pray for God's grace for you to just hang in there during the end of the birth pangs. Okay, so hang in there. I know it is nuts. I know it is crazy. But hang on to that helmet of salvation. Like just cling to it fiercely. The promises of salvation that God gave for us. That, when the Messiah comes, is going to be like, what does it say? We're going to be laughing. It's going to be joyful. Um, there's I can't think of the verse. It's gonna be like we're dreaming. It's gonna be so great. So hang in there. If you just hang in there, God has some blessings for us. So hang in there. God bless. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you on the other side, hopefully. God bless.